voice of Reichman University.
Come to my hackathon, come, bo. I just bought you hackathon, special deal, 20% off.
Startup Shuk. Exploring Israel's tech bazaar with Deo Arlo.
Welcome everyone to Startup Shuk. We are joined today with Amir Haramaty, and he is the CEO and co-founder of aiOla, an amazing company, a very interesting company that I come across in the internet. And he's the chief commercial officer previously at SparkBeyond, a predictive analytics company, the chief operating officer of Adallom, a cybersecurity company, which is acquired by Microsoft. And he served as vice president and board of many other impressive companies like Amobee, Onavo, Mintigo, Sora. These companies were acquired by the likes of SingTel and Facebook, so giants. So very, very nice and very honored to have you, a serial problem solver, here in our podcast.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you for having me, and I'm glad you used the right terminology, not a serial entrepreneur, but a serial problem solver.
I did my research. So I first came across aiOla when I was browsing for the latest voice tech companies. A bit of a background, I'm a very nerdy guy. I like building things on the side. I previously came from Technion before, transferred to Reichman, and I'm studying currently computer science. I'm a big fan of stories of Jarvis and the movie of Her. I truly believe that in the future, technology, at least human-computer interaction, will be dominated mostly by voice. And I'm not just saying this because you're the CEO of aiOla and I saw what your company is doing. No, but I've been building a Jarvis-esque, code toys in the past, to entertain myself. And it's a hobby of mine to program. And I'm really impressed by what you guys are doing, not only because you're doing it in a significant technical margin that's like way beyond what the current market offers, but also because you are targeting industries, not just general industries for everyone, but targeting specific industries, which I think are very important. So you're not just commercializing this for everyone, which I think in the future that could have been possible. That is truly an option, but you're targeting first very, very important industries like healthcare, and I would love to hear more about that.
Absolutely. So again, your observation is spot on, and I'm actually going to take it, with your permission, a bit broader. Everybody, speaks using, I think, the two most used and abused letters in the English language at present time is A and I. And with the progress made with AI in the last 24, 36 months, specifically with generative AI, is incredible, but some people get confused because with the progress made with AI tools, despite the fact that AI is still just tools. And at the end of the day, we need to feed the beast. Mm-hmm. Meaning it's no longer, in my opinion, no longer an AI challenge, it's actually now a data challenge. So most of the data in the world is still not part of the game because it's uncaptured and unstructured. And therefore I say I rather focus, even though I'm deep into AI for the last 10 years, I like to focus right now on data, number one. Number two, with all the hype about Gen AI, I think right now there's some kind of rude awakening. The hype is gone, and now people are looking for practical Gen AI or practical AI, how this great technology is going to impact my bottom line. And you notice properly that I'm targeting the most traditional industries, the must-haves that actually control our life. It's if healthcare or food or energy or supply chain or semiconductors. And understanding that speech, what we're doing in this podcast right now, is by far the most efficient form of communication, nothing even come close to it. And eventually, in my opinion, like you said before, any human-machine interface will be voice first. But if you try to do it today in professional setting, good luck. First, accuracy. Most ASR, automatic speech recognition platform, in professional settings are going to be sub 60% in accuracy because of combination of language, accent, acoustic environment, but above all, jargon. Turns out that in every industry, in any process, there's a very specific jargon for the industry, for a company, for a specific location. And in all fairness, there's no platform off the shelf that can handle it. So that's a problem. And even if you get perfect transcription and you very accurately be able to get speech to text, it's still not good enough because the majority of that data is irrelevant. You're looking for very specific nuggets, how to separate the noise from the signal, and to be able, it's called keywords. How do you be able to spot those keywords and extract it automatically? So I like big problems and identify two. One, how can I get a more accurate and go through jargon because that's a key component. And second is, how can I find those keywords in a language I don't speak, in a domain I don't understand, and use those two to generate language models. And again, that's another key component because right now, everybody is doing things in certain ways. And, you've been in Israel now for several years, and, we do things in the wrong direction. We write from right to left, we read from right to left. So even when I'm looking on a problem, I'm not looking from the conventional way. The big guys, OpenAI, etc., what they're doing, they're constantly boiling the ocean in brute force, and then from very wide, they're trying to go narrow to specific derivatives. We took it the other way around. And actually, we are able to generate language models automatically for a specific process or workflow for any language or process or any industry in minutes. And that's really a game changer. So understanding it's all about data. It's all about practical way of using the technology. It's all about a bottom line. Understanding that speech is the most common form of communication. Understanding the challenges of accuracy, keyword spotting, and building models. So once we address the jargon, the keyword spotting, and the automatic model generation, it got us to the Holy Grail, and that's where we're at.
I truly believe that speech is the number one way of communication. I think the past decades of human progress in technology, we're trying to adapt humans to machines. We create keyboard, to help us communicate our thoughts and ideas to a computer in a very, very unnatural way, unhuman way. And speech is the most natural way you can get, right? Before Neuralink comes, we'll talk about that later.
Yep.
But help me understand, what is the product that aiOla brings to companies? Do you produce specific LLMs for a specific industry, or do you have one that serves all?
No, the beauty of it, and again, it's part of maybe one step before, with your permission, we realize that we have a great idea. And in order to get this great idea going, we need to have the right people. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to get a kosher stamp to make sure I'm in the right direction. So I was searching for the best speech expert I can find in the world. Turns out that one of the very best in the world actually in Israeli. Nobody's perfect. Professor Joseph Geshet from the Technion, who actually at the time was leading the research of Alexa for Amazon.
Wow.
And I spent a couple hours with Yossi, as we call him. And then he said, Amir, you haven't offered me a thing, but I already accepted. Tell me you want me, I'd love to become your chief scientist, and he did. And that combination of an incredible, I call it in my language, it's a combination of schnitzel with schug. Okay, the schug is a spicy, so it's a Yemenite, so schnitzel is schnitzel.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Yemen, so people came from Yemen have a very specific spice, it's called schug.
I think I've tried it, yeah.
I never had it before I came to the military, and once you got it, I got out of the closet. I grew up in a house that you had only sugar and salt.
Oh, voila.
And all of a sudden I had this schug on my tongue. And as soon as schug, I knew this is special. And for me, it's a great analogy because you have a schnitzel, which comes from actually Central Eastern Europe. And you get schug that came from Yemen. And when you combine both, you're getting an unbelievable sensation. And I think that's really the melting pot. And, you've been here for a number of years. That creates this incredible skill sets, incredible way of thinking out of the box. And what we have done is we realize I'm mentoring a lot of young startups, and I enjoy that very much. And one of the key components when I do that is always focus on, focus. Pick a vertical, focus on that vertical, do it right. And arguably, here I'm doing exactly the opposite. Actually, the focus is not on the vertical, the focus is on the platform. And I realize, as you can tell by now, I'm dumb as it gets. I understand nothing about no domains. I don't need to know anything about any domain. And actually, we came with a very clever way, because there's always sensitivity about data privacy, about security. We don't need the client data either. And I'll give you, a very fresh example. I spoke to a Korean tire manufacturer, the third largest in the world. And I'm giving the pitch about what we do. And when I finish, the CIO says, actually, Amir, since 2018, 6 years ago, he decided that any data entry in a process, he wanted to do speech-based. And he's tried every possible automatic speech recognition platform off the shelf. And he said, unfortunately, we got sub 60% accuracy, which is not good enough. I don't know, because it's Korean or accent or acoustic environment, it doesn't work. And so first of all, thank you, because I don't need to convince you about the need. You thought about it way before I did. Second, I don't need to tell you how difficult it is. You just prove it. And I took a recording in Korean, which we don't speak, in a domain we don't understand, and I read it in parallel on aiOla and in one of the leading cloud ASR, a name that starts with A and ends with N, and there's Z in the middle. And we ran it, and two things. First, we were about 5 times faster, but speed is not always the issue. Second, any ASR platform transcribes everything, just writes the words. aiOla, we don't speak Korean, we don't understand the domain, yet we identify the keywords, we paint them in green, and I'm speaking to Korean-speaking CIO, and I say, I hope we pick the right words. And he said, I don't know how you do it, but it's exactly what you've done. And then we measure underneath what's called word error rate. So we take the ground truth, what the person was reading, compare it to the transcription, and we measure in the error. The error rate that we had in that company with it A and Z and N end up with 0.46 error rate, so it's 54% accuracy. aiOla first attempt in Korean, 0.04, 99% accuracy. So first, this is like, wow. Amir, that 60% is 0, above 90 is 100, because the 0 and 1. And second, I say, how much data do you need in order to generate the model? I say, actually, a single form in Korean, I don't speak, a list of keywords in the letters I cannot even understand. We feed it. We build a platform. We trademark it as Jargonic. We take the form, we annotize it, we take the keywords, and we use 3 steps that basically takes the keywords approach to ASR. We generate the data on our own. We don't need external data. So it's synthetic data we generate based on a single form. And then we fine-tune it in less than 2 hours. You're going to have, it's not an LLM, it's really a domain-specific or process-specific language model, not large. It's a very small. Actually, the beauty of it, it's a very small model, very light, very agile, and very accurate, and very economic because of that. And then, but that language model was tailored for the specific form or workflow or process, specific acoustic environment, specific accent, and specific jargon with accuracy that start north of 95%.
What do you mean by acoustic environment?
Acoustic environment, one of my clients, I cannot mention the name of the company, but it's very large logistic company, it's 3 letters in brown, that both ground and air. And we were in their sorting facility in Louisville, Kentucky. And over there, the machine that's sorting 1 million packages a shift with noise of 98 dB decibels. So acoustic environment can be a very noisy production facility, very noisy. I just came back from the US last Tuesday, we were all day with United Airlines that now becomes a client, an investor.
Wow.
And you can imagine the noise on the tarmac, the noise. Right. So that's the acoustic environment I'm referring to. We have some other examples when several people are talking in parallel, noisy environment. We're doing a project right now in China, actually, for the largest jewelry manufacturer in the world. And they're inspecting those pieces of jewelry pieces by microscope, and then they need to write down the report. Now they don't need to stop. They can look and talk, and the report has been filled in real time. And that's very noisy. And they're speaking Mandarin and Cantonese. And I tried to break and challenge the system to the point that didn't understand each other, but the system still picked up what I'm trying to say. So that's the acoustic environment. So the key there is the ability to, in any environment, to be able to, the first project we've done actually, going back to the understanding that, we live right now in a very crazy times, geopolitically, macroeconomically, post-COVID, then the war in Europe, then the mess in our neighborhood, and who knows what's going to happen between China and Taiwan. And I realized that all those elements are actually forcing organizations to make a clear separation between what perceived to be nice to have versus must have. Whatever is nice to have, forget about it. I don't have time for cosmetic surgery. I have to stay alive. So I realized I want to take this technology, going back to the first statement you said in the beginning of this conversation. I targeted specifically must-have verticals, critical processes where quite frequently are regulatory, where I can demonstrate quantifiable ROI at scale. And I start with a meat processing factory. And Spoke, this is a Fortune 60 company. When I work with McKinsey, I had the chance to be part of about 200 McKinsey engagements with Fortune 1000. So I have good access, and I'm much nicer than I look. And I have good access, and I build a lot of friends in those companies. So I reach out to Fortune 60 companies. I say, hey, when you start your day, you just flip the button and start production? I say, oh, of course not. We have to complete this highly regulatory pre-op inspection. What is pre-op inspection? Oh, those are 20 pages. Group of inspectors, 4:30 in the morning, have to go to the entire inspection. Until they're done, you cannot start production. How long does it take? On average, 2 hours. Wow. And production is idle during those 2 hours? I say, yes. I say, whoa. What if we're going to turn the entire process to hands-free, paperless? They're going to walk and talk, and the forms are going to be filled. I think it's going to be way more efficient. It's going to be safer. It's going to be smarter. It's going to be collaborative. And I said, great. Why don't we do a pilot in Queensland, Australia? And when they sent us the recording, we put it in an automatic speech recognition platform off the shelf. And the accuracy was 52%. And I was shocked. So first, I thought it's the Aussie accent. It didn't help, but that was not the reason. Second, acoustic environment, we solved it. Turns out the jargon to be the challenge. That's guided us to the jargon, to solve the jargon issue. Finally, we did a pilot, and they came back to us and said, oh my God, instead of 2 hours to complete the process, now we do it in less than 53 minutes.
Wow. So
this is a razor-thin margin industry. Now you're getting a free production hour. It's very dramatic, number one. Number two, when they did this manual inspection, the paperwork went nowhere. Basically, the file it in case there's an audit. We turned this 100% paper to 100% green knowledge. So this is to previously uncaptured and unstructured data that now became raw material for insights and intelligence. And for example, the first product they produced every morning for the last 30 years was breakfast sausages. Why? Because. And after 3 weeks of this fresh data, the data was screaming and actually telling breakfast sausages leaves more residue, takes longer to clean. That should be the last product of the day. Duh. You don't know what you don't know. You cannot have the right answer unless you ask the right question. So the ability now to get the instant value, on the efficiency gains. But the second way, which is even bigger, that raw material that previously was uncaptured and unstructured becomes now an evergreen, ever learning. Even in the name of aiOla, you saw the AI, big fat O, LA. And the reason it's there because it's not an O. It's a fat intelligence loop, evergreen, ever learning. Constantly collecting information, getting more insights and intelligence, and that's the way it started. And then I realized, I can do it for the food industry. By the way, something I didn't know, food safety alone, it's $100 billion a year business, which is ripe for disruption. It's highly mandatory and regulatory. So you can take this and replicate it. But we didn't stop there. Then that large brown 3 letters logistic company came to us. And I said, we got more than 100,000 vehicles. And every vehicle needs to be inspected every morning with a 40-point checklist. And they call this, has a very ambitious name. The name of the form is 60 seconds quick look audit.
And how long did it take?
So I asked them 2 questions. First, where's the data going to? Nowhere. And I know it sounds stupid, but how long does it take you to do the so-called 60 seconds quick look audit? Start laughing and say 15 to 20 minutes. Now the entire process is being completed in less than a minute, about 53, 54 seconds, regardless of the noise and the accent. So we're saving them more than 50 minutes per vehicle per day times 100,000. But now the data is streaming for 100,000 vehicles every morning. and you can connect the dots beyond what human eye can see or beyond what human brain can process, and you can see how the tires behave, for example, in Miami versus how they behave in Toronto, Canada, which is completely different. And then I say, okay, this was great, and came the biggest competitors, blue and red, and they said, what are you doing with this company? And we told them, so, efficiency gains is great, but for us, NPS, or Net Promoter Score, or customer satisfaction is more important. If you're getting to a FedEx package, and it was damaged because it was raining in Jakarta, which doesn't happen here very often, but in Jakarta it happens quite often.
Right.
And you got those monsoons there. And right now you tell the courier what just happened, and the courier say, I apologize, please go online and file a report, which is a black hole. It's a terrible experience. So they ask us, can you open up a ticket on speech? With speech? I say, sure. Can you do it in Mandarin because we want to run a pilot in Singapore? So try to, can you integrate our backend systems? Try to imagine you just had a terrible experience. You're staying next to the client. And next to the client, you can open a ticket and say, right now, Steve is not happy because there's a duplicate billing and charges that he's not happy with. Please open a ticket. On the spot, that information goes to the backend system. The client gets a confirmation with a case number you can track. The system now getting those complaints worldwide. Whenever a problem happens, so you can connect the dots and can identify trends before they actually form. And next, they realize, you know what, we got 650,000 drivers or couriers. They're driving all day, every day. They're seeing a lot of things. They're exposed to a lot of things, but nothing is being captured and absolutely nothing is being reported back. So I just deliver a package to Steve, and so there's a pallet ready for our shipment. I say, hey, Steve, where this is going to? Oh, I'm shipping to Dubai. Now the courier go back to the car, pick up his phone. It's a potential new sales opportunity. Steve ships by air to Dubai. Sales should talk to him. Boom. And all of a sudden, you got those 650,000 people on the street to collect critical intelligence and report in real time and close the loop, which is not happening today.
Right.
And I can take many different examples, but the beauty of it is whatever process, and that's another very important, humbling experience I had. I'm a disruptor by choice. I love it. I've been disrupting my entire career, but it took me maybe too long to realize that most people in the world don't like to be disrupted. And that's when you need to eat a little bit of humble pie and be respectful. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how wonderful the technology is. It's all about people. It's all about usage. It's all about adoption. And it's all about managing change. So you want to do it in the most non-threatening approach. I'm not here to replace you. I'm not here to disrupt or tell you that everything you do is wrong. I respect what you have to do, but what if I'm going to help you to do it more efficient, safer, smarter, collaborative? I'm here to enhance and augment, not to disrupt. So that combination, and I think that's really the ingredients for success here, in one end is to identify a real problem. Another end, of course, to solve it. At the same time, not to disrupt, to enhance and augment. And everything, and I think this is the key component here, it all has to be value-based solutions. It's very difficult to quantify. I always joke that the three letters that I love the most in English language is R-O and I. And I give you actually an incredible experience that started not far from here in Herzliya. About a year ago, I was asked to give a lecture to a group of Canadian business people that came to visit Israel about the art of the possible in AI. I enjoy doing that. On my way out, one of the participants chases me out, and he says, my name is Eric. I'm the chairman of a supermarket chain in Canada, a $19 billion supermarket chain. Are you going to be in Montreal anytime soon? I said, actually, I'm going to be there in a couple of weeks. My chairman is Montreal-based. I'll be there. I said, great. I'd like you to invite you to speak to my board. Sure, happy to. 2 weeks later, I'm in Montreal, and I can tell by the body language that something is not right. And he comes to me and he says, Amir, I apologize. When you spoke in Israel, I got very excited, maybe too excited. When I saw your name in the agenda, I got cold feet. Because you guys are bleeding edge technology in AI. We are, I'm quoting him, stupid grocers. The gap is too big, and I'm afraid you're going to confuse my board. So I canceled the meeting. You're not going to speak to the board. You're going to meet just with me, my CEO, and my CIO. And I hope you didn't come all the way to Montreal just for me. And I said, thank you, Eric. Take a deep breath. Relax. First, did you enjoy my session in Israel? So very much so. Do you think that your COO and CIO will enjoy it? I think so. Great. That's our goal for the day. And by the way, I didn't come all the way to Montreal just to see you. All good. And I'm speaking to those three guys, and I have no knowledge about grocery operations. And by the time I finished, the CIO flipped his tablet and showed me 10 potential use cases how we want to use it. The first one to me, at the time, looked stupid. Apparently, they have to check, mandatory by Ministry of Health, the temperature of the meat inside a refrigerator several times a day. And today they're doing with a temperature gun, write down the paper that goes nowhere. And they say, and again, my chairman told me don't do it because French Canadian is a real difficult language. I live in Montreal, I don't understand what they're saying in Quebec City. And the market for the complexity doesn't worth it. And I said, do me a favor, send me in all your file in French Canadian, highly jargonistic, and we're going to run it. The ASR off the shelf did about 0.48, so 52% accuracy. First attempt we did 0.01, 99% accuracy. So, okay, I guess I can do it. And then we ran the pilot. And I wanted them to pay a certain amount of money. And he said, for the pilot, and he said, Amir, we don't pay that amount of money for annual basis on any technology. And I say, hey, you don't have to do it. But what we're doing, I'm not going to give you this number unless we can defend it with the value we generate. And we discuss back and forth and say, you know what, I'll do it, but you tell me at the end of the pilot we can pause and measure the impact because I don't think you'll be able to justify your price. And if at the end of the pilot you will not be able to justify the price, will you be willing, Amir, to adjust your price accordingly? I say, you know what, fair enough, I'll do it. We're doing the pilot. After 3 months, he calls me. And he said, Amir, for the last 3 years, every board meeting starts with a question from my board is, Eric, what are you doing with AI? And he's flailing, talking about chatbots or ChatGPT. He said, but for the first time, I was sitting tall in my seat and said, actually, on a single process, checking temperature in the refrigerator, we just saved 110,000 hours that went directly to EBITDA.
So finally, AI is not a gimmick.
It's not a gimmick. Exactly right. And then he said, you know, Amir, what's the minimum salary in Canada? He gave me $17.40 and actually showed me the ROI on the price that I asked him is actually 5.5x. So the point there is this is a 4% margin industry, the most traditional. They don't have the skill set. They don't have a data scientist. And yet, minimum salary guys using a temperature gun, using speech, driving impact with speech AI technology with ROI 5.5x. You know, Frank Sinatra saying about New York, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So if you can make it in this industry with those users, for me, that's the absolutely greatest example how applicable it is. And everything there is value-based that can be quantifiable, can be measured, and you can demonstrate the value to the organization.
It's almost like philosophical if you think about the human brain as a bunch of neurons that talk to each other. How do you solve problems faster? How do you think faster? Well, if you can increase the rate of connection between those neurons, then you can think faster, solve problems faster. And in the scale of humans, if you can increase the speed of exchange of information from human to human or human to computer, then you can increase the speed of you solving problems, your organization solving problems. So that's a very interesting insight there. You mentioned something very interesting also, which there was a quote by some guy, I forgot, but it's easier to adapt futuristic technologies to the present human than to adapt humans to futuristic technologies. You don't want to force people to adapt to this new thing you invented in your closet, right? You want to solve it for humans, and it's a human problem, so you need to be human and deliver it the human way.
So I think, again, both are very, very accurate observation. Okay, so the first part is it's not just about the speed, but in order to make decisions, especially when you have the capacity to handle large amount of data, you need a quality data first. Mm-hmm. You know, I had many discussions with my good friends at Salesforce, and I know them very well, and we work with them today. Salesforce is incredible because that's the first, arguably, SaaS-based model that was very, very successful from the very beginning. Now they're celebrating, but it's 25 years. It came in 1999. Commercially, phenomenal success. Operationally, if I may say so carefully, and I apologize in advance, it's a colossal failure. Because I haven't found a single person saying, oh my God, I'm so excited, I'm going to log into Salesforce. And I'm not picking up on Salesforce, but any other CRM. People treat it as chore. They do it because they have to, not because they want to, and therefore it's reflected in the quality, quantity, timing. Now, if you will handle the data entry in a simple way, in a different way, you don't need to log into your computer and start to fill the specific field. You can speak naturally, anywhere, any accent, any language, any acoustic environment, and the system will do the rest and grab it. Now you're creating the missing pieces of data that previously was uncaptured and unstructured that now allows the power of AI actually to make better decisions. But you were missing, like where's the beef? Now you actually generate it. That's number one. Number two is even more important, what you were talking about, because about the human and technology. We need to understand, at least in the near future, we need to deliver it. We need to make it accessible. In Hebrew, it's a great word. It's called hangasha. It doesn't translate well to English, but to make it super accessible, not threatening, and basically say, I'm not here to disrupt. I'm here to augment and enhance. I'm not going to change dramatically the way you conduct business, but I'm going to allow you to do it faster, more efficient. And for me, that's the fact that the users becoming our biggest friends, that's the proof. The fact that we generate quantifiable ROI makes management very happy as well. But those are great observations because at the end of the day, it's not a science project. It's not a technology competition or experimentation. It's about value-based solution that need to be used by humans at present time in existing organizations. Some of them are very traditional and old school. And regardless of their maturity level, actually we were speaking while we were working here about the fact that we're now looking for somebody who speaks Indonesian and many different languages in Indonesia, as you know. And the reason is we're now working with one of the largest pharma companies in the world. And very wisely, I was sitting with their CEO, and she said, normally, we're a global company. And it was a funny quote she gave me as well. She said, do you know what we're doing here? I said, oh yeah, you develop and sell drugs? She said, no. We chop trees and print papers. Everything is paperwork and paperwork and paperwork. And if we can streamline that process by speech, she said, we have ridiculous situations that shelves in pharmacies are empty. The products are ready for shipment, and they're not happening because they're waiting for paperwork to be completed.
Right.
And so if we can streamline that part, and she's saying, we normally do pilots in the US, but we're a global company as those technologies don't travel well. So we want from the very beginning to start in 3 different continents. Yes, we'll do the US, but I want to do Brazil, and I want to do Indonesia. And the US is fully integratable, very advanced. I can go to the backend system. The Brazil one is not there yet. They're still dealing with data visualization like Power BI. And Indonesia, wonderful people, but they're still with Excel spreadsheets. And for me, same logo, different stages of maturity completely, and yet each one of them, regardless of the maturity level, was able to benefit and get ROI, even if it's a fully integrated system, all the way to Excel spreadsheet, they still can benefit from that.
Speeches for everyone.
Exactly right. We're working right now on a project which is evolving with one of the largest hotels in Vegas. It's a 7,200 suites and rooms. The housekeeping staff comes from 100 different nationalities. It's a modern-day Tower of Babylon. Now they all speak... Literally, exactly. And they all now speak a single language. Regardless of how they input the language. They can use Amharic, they can use Arabic, they can use Russian or Spanish, Mexican, or whatever. It doesn't matter. So in a way, we're actually flattening the world. And especially now when you're dealing with global companies, we deal with different languages. And you gave a great comment in the beginning about all these keyboards, very creative inventions to try to facilitate and make it easier to communicate.
Yeah.
But what's easier than just, what's the first thing you learn to communicate with?
Babies talk.
Exactly.
There's this quote about from Vinod Khosla, I think. He mentioned about in the future, every single interaction we have with machines is going to be speech.
Exactly. No, that's the reason from Khosla. Absolutely. That was like 3 months ago, actually. I was reading that article, and I communicated with him after, because he was talking exactly about that. Every human-machine interface is going to be voice first, and what's available today is just not good enough.
Right.
And actually what we have done, we flew under the radar. And we love to fly under the radar with the technology. And then I was approached by my team, and I said, Amir, actually we are outperforming the best out there. And I said, give me some benchmarks. And actually, the most common and actually the gold standard right now in speech AI is OpenAI's Whisper, which is the voice interface.
Yep.
And then we realized we're actually using less than half of the parameters they need. So we are super narrow, super efficient, super quick. And we are today 27% more accurate than Whisper, which is incredible. So that's something that we published. And then we realized, actually, and that we wanted to be part of the community. So we just 2.5 weeks ago, on August 1st, we released an open source Whisper Medusa that's available right now on GitHub and Hugging Face.
It's open source.
Open source. That actually takes Whisper and make it 50% faster. And then I started to get phone calls from all over the world. So, oh my God, so you can do it now 50% faster than Whisper. Say, yeah, but you missed the previous PR because actually we're doing also 27% more accurate. Now, the second part, we talk about keyword spotting. And then we realized actually the most advanced and the most accurate keyword spotting was developed by Apple. They did a very good job to get to 92.7% accuracy, which is very nice, but only for 2 predefined words. Hi, Siri. We now took it to something which is 2 orders of magnitude faster, better accuracy, and for any undefined words. So all of a sudden we realized like, oh my God, to be honest, we don't even fully grasp the full magnitude. And every time I go to a different potential clients and I learn about the use cases, they want to take it, I'm amazed. I was sitting with one of the large clients we're working with, and we tried to map out additional use cases. And one guy was looking at another guy and he said, warranties. Another guy said, oh yeah, warranties. And I said, care to share? I said, yeah, we're losing every year tens of millions of dollars of unactivated warranties. The mechanic will roll underneath the vehicle, replace the part, but we never would take the time to go back to the office and punch the keys and activate the warranties. And now he can read out loud the number of the part, take a picture, attach it, and done. So yeah, like for me, that's part of the fascinating journey because we know what we're capable of doing, but every day we're learning new ways to use it in different verticals we never thought about it before. And that's the beauty of it. So how to apply advanced technology in the simplest manner that can play nice with everyone, can integrate to whatever you have, and get superior results that connect directly to your bottom line, and everything's quantifiable in a non-threatening way. I think you have to touch all those elements in order to make a winning combination. And modestly, I think we found one.
That's beautiful. Amir, I can't help but wonder, even in this current state where we need to actively get a pen, get a paper, write things down, write information down to be inputted into the system. There's a lot to be disrupted, to be solved, to be improved, to be augmented with speech. But I can't help but wonder, what if in the future, and I want to hear your thoughts, would AI and computers be able to be more involved passively? I imagine in the surgery room, for example, a surgeon is talking to the assistant while doing the work, and there's a lot of information there. Even in the office, in the corridors, there's a lot of information just flying around and fading away. Could we possibly capture that and use that for the company's own benefit, for intelligence and improvements?
First, the simple answer is absolutely yes. Now, we need to be careful. And I started really by, I went back to this management consulting company that I was very close to in many years. And I asked them, what's your biggest asset? And I was guiding them to the answer they eventually gave us, which is knowledge. And I said, what's the average tenure, by the way, of your consultants? And it turned out to be less than 3 years. And I said, so you're recruiting and finding really the best diamond out there. They're very, very proud of the fact that they got millions of applicants every year and they got very few selected. And then you spend 12 months training them and onboarding them. And then you throw them in front of the biggest clients in the world. They're getting so much critical information and knowledge from interacting. How much of that is actually being reporting back and becoming the dynamic IP of the organization?
Right.
Very little. Okay, there's no way even to capture it. So, and this is, again, I took it to extreme to management consulting company, but you gave a great example because I'll tell you, for example, in a surgical theater, like in an operation room, there's several elements here. One is the knowledge. The second component is documenting. I can tell you, sadly, we all know what happened on October 7th. On October 7th, Soroka, the hospital in the south, had to do an unprecedented number of surgeries, emergency surgeries. And the doctors never had the time, actually, to capture the information. I received a real-time request if we could potentially help them. By the way, we could. It was killed by red tape, but the solution was there. And I said, every time they go out to wash their hands to scrub again, they can send us a WhatsApp message just documenting, telling us what they've done step by step during the last surgery. By the time they step up again for the next one, they'll be able to get a summary, review it, and sign it. And then we talk about this as a country in trauma. You have so many social workers right now running from families and elderlies, and half of this country, if not more, is actually need help right now. How do you capture all the data? And those are extreme situations. But you can take it even to think about it. Let's say you're a Mercedes service station in Kfar Saba. And the mechanic there, a very bright mechanic, found a very clever way to solve a problem in a different way how does he capture it? How this knowledge now transfer it to Mercedes-Benz service station worldwide?
Exactly.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
So knowledge is power. And now, if you make it painless to capture that knowledge and share the knowledge, it's a massive asset. Now, I don't believe at this stage, because of respect to privacy, etc., in passive listening. I want to allow the people to share the information when they're ready and let them do it in their own voice. But yet, right now, most of that is washed away because you have no way to capture it and no way to structure it in a way that the knowledge is going to be shared across the organization.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. We've spoken a lot about aiOla, which I think it's amazing, and there's a lot we can still dive into. But here in Startup Shook, we like to talk about also the person behind it. I think technology is not just for technology. Technology is also human, as we've discussed here. So I want to know a bit about you in person. Like, who is Amir? What's your childhood like, and what led you to entrepreneurship?
It's a great question, and actually there's a lot of things to learn when I look back. So I was a terrible student in high school. I was mostly playing basketball.
So we have that in common.
So you have a great future ahead of you, I can tell you. And actually, it's funny, my English is basic, but when my parents went to the parents-teacher meeting, the English teacher told my parents to say, the students in English classes are broken down to 3 categories. One, the naturals, the one that are very good with languages. They don't need to make a big effort. They'll be great English speakers. Unfortunately, your son is not part of that category. The second one, the hard workers. They're going to work really hard. They're going to struggle, but eventually, with terrible Israeli accent, they're going to master the language mechanically. Unfortunately, your son doesn't belong to that group either. The third group are the ones that doesn't matter what they do, they will never, ever speak English. They'll be able to speak English when air will grow in my palm. And unfortunately, that's the group that your son belongs to. Now, he looks like a very nice kid, and he's a good basketball player, so it's okay with me that he doesn't need to come to English classes. He can play basketball. I'll tell you about my journey, but fast forward, years later, I'm working for NASA. And I'm traveling back and forth Israel to the US, and I like to walk every few hours when I fly those long flights. And I see somebody who looks very, very familiar. And I stop by, and I said his name, my English teacher. And I say, yes, who are you? I said, can you show me your palm, please? I said, excuse me? Can you show me your palm? I said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm the student that you said that I'll speak English only when air is going to grow on your palm. Here's my business card. And I walked away. So that was a small victory, okay? And I think there's a great lesson for all of us when teacher kind of categorize us and write us off, which is terrible. And I was not smart enough to be in a technology unit in the military, so I ended up in Airborne Special Forces. And I was wounded in combat in Lebanon, an injury that changed the rest of my life.
When was this?
The first Lebanon War. And I realized it's kind of stupid that in the 20th century you have to play James Bond and cut the blue wire and red wire. There's technology. So with a group of people, we created the first ever company that built remote control robots for bomb disposal. So the Israeli National Police robots are part of if you do Wikipedia, you'll see my name over there. It's called Bambi, the first robot we did for the Israeli National Police. And then this took off. And talking about problem solving, and before you know it, I started to work for aerospace company with NASA, building robots for the first was for the shuttle program, and then working with the U.S. Army Missile Command Center in Huntsville, Alabama, and then doing projects for nuclear facilities all over the world, specifically in the U.S., just doing some crazy stuff. So for me, those two elements, the fact that the problems to be solved and the fact that injury in Lebanon that changed the course of my life. One of the things I learned is, if you're going to check very carefully between your toes, you're going to find an expiration date. Unfortunately, we all got one. I hope that for you and for me, it's many years down the road, but we're here on borrowed time. I don't want to waste a minute, and I got a new list on life. So whatever I do right now, I want to be meaningful. I want to follow my passion, and I'm fueled by passion. And the more I do, the hungrier I get. So from there, it's a long journey, but I've been around where I found out that, I'm not married to specific vertical or specific problems. So that's the reason I was able to deal with location-based services before anybody knew what it is. I'm talking about the early 2000s. the first phone with GPS, with WAP technology. I was able to do some incredible stuff over there. And then getting into big data, and then getting into cyber, and then understand, everybody goes, especially here in Israel, doing cyber. I help another company, which is a great company called Armis. Actually, Armis was born in my house in the Galil.
Wow.
And actually, I gave it its name. It's Armis is a shield in Latin. And amazing guys that took it from there and did it on their own, but I helped them to get the jump start. And then I realized I want to get into AI. And the 6 years with SparkBeyond that you mentioned over there were fascinating, because we realized at the end of the day, in order to get the right answer, you must ask the right question. And the human brain is still arguably the best tool, but the human brain is limited with low dimensionality, which is a very nice and polite way to say it, because there's so much we can see and so much we can process, and it's fairly limited. But worse than that, the ideation component. The human brain is limited in how many hypotheses we can generate.
Right.
So actually we built an hypothesis generating engine. And I did some crazy projects, including Indonesia, like to help farmers to identify how to improve the yields in the plantation, or how to help, crazy story, the largest Japanese retail company to open up 10,000 7-Eleven-like stores. What's the optimal locations in big cities in Japan? And we know nothing about Japan real estate, but we drive the engine and we were able to find out that there's a direct link between a location of a laundromat. And you ask, like, what's the connection here? So the system, because we can take so many data sources, internal and external, and come up with all these hypotheses and measure it. And we found out that most young people in urban areas in Japan are renting very small apartments, where they have no room for washer and dryer. Therefore, they need to spend at least 60 to 90 minutes a week waiting for the laundry in the laundromat. And if you're going to open up a 7-Eleven-like convenience stores within a walking distance, they have plenty of time to buy things they don't need while waiting for the laundry. And then dealing with a copper mining company that need to make a decision where to go and dig the copper, because it's very, very deep right now. You need to go a mile deep in order to find it. And making those decisions, it's a heavy decision. And we found a very clear connection between where the lightning hit to strike the ground to where the next deposit of copper underneath the ground. Now, in hindsight, it makes perfect sense. You think about metal conductivity, etc., but nobody ever thought about combining lightning strikes data to identify where the next location.
Is that true, by the way?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
And all the way to a project which we did with McKinsey, with one of the infamous jails in the U.S. It's called Rikers Island in New York, where they tried to reduce or minimize the violence of the inmates. So we used a platform to find what's the best match to put the inmates in the same cell to minimize violence. It's very good also for university dormitories, etc.
Right.
But we were able to reduce inmate violence by more 60%. So the point there I'm trying to make is always looking. The drive I had from the point that nobody trusts me, so there was always a chip on my shoulder. Then going through a life-changing experience that basically learn. One of the greatest lessons, and I'm going back to this because unfortunately, many fellow Israelis went recently through a traumatic experience, October 7 and the war, and many new, unfortunately, people were injured, etc. And I think the physical one, of course, is a big challenge. The mental one is even bigger to overcome. And I'm a very logical man, and I always try to explain to me what just happened. So again, I have plenty of shrapnels were removed, plenty of shrapnel still in my body, and I coexist with that. Okay, many years later, I'm in reasonably good shape. But for the longest time, I could not explain to myself what I went through. And I'm not watching TV much. I listen to TV when I travel. And it was a conventions before the election in the US, 2008, I believe. And Barack Obama comes and gives this incredible speech. For me, he came out of nowhere. And the guy can talk. It's amazing, poetry in motion. A week later, the Republican convention is very timely because Democratic convention is happening as we speak in Chicago this year. Happens in St. Paul, Minnesota. And the late John McCain got the nomination. I have the utmost respect to McCain. He used to be a U.S. Air Force pilot that was a POW, prisoner of war in Vietnam, tortured, injured. Incredible story. Great speaker he was not. And he started giving a speech, and it was painful to listen. I almost flipped the channel. But then he said 5 words, which hit me like a lightning. He said, I was blessed by misfortune. And all of a sudden, those simple 5 words solved my puzzle. And I realized I will never gonna wish my worst enemy to go through what I did, because it was a horrible experience. But I'm so glad that I went through it and came reasonably okay on the other side, because I got the greatest gift on all. It's called, you get perspective.
Yeah.
And I realized, you know what? From that moment on, I understand the opportunity I got. I understand how fragile life is. You don't want to waste a minute with the wrong people. And your ability to control your own destiny, it's much greater than you think. So just do. Shortly after I was giving, when I was working at McKinsey, I gave a speech. I was part of a panel in Poland. And then was Q&A. And one of the people in the crowd asked me a question, say, Amir, you're from Israel, right? I said, guilty as charged. He said, I read the book, Startup Nation. Now it's a bit outdated, but it's a great book. And I read that the total Israeli exits outperforms the total exits in Europe, which is true. He said, can you explain why we don't have it here in Poland? And I said, first, I'm not an expert on Poland, but my impression from what I'm seeing in my business visits, that perception, because the church is so strong and it's so conservative, is failure is not an option. And I can see many heads in the crowd nodding. And then I say, I could not agree with you more. Failure should not be an option. It must be mandatory. So the key there of understanding you have one life to live. Your ability to control your destiny is much greater than you think. Dare. Take chances. Fall hard. Fall quick. Take your lessons and move forward. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm doing ever since.
Amir, that's beautiful. One thing you spoke that really touched me is your accident. Now, I don't have some experience that can compare to that, but I had an accident when I was around, 10. I was hit by a bus. I was on a motorbike, and me and my sister, we were all just blood on the floor, and we were rushed into the hospital, and thank God we're safe now. But one thing I can take away from that point is that I'm living on borrowed time, so I'm really glad you said that, and hopefully, I'm still young, but there's a lot of things that is ahead of me, and I hope I can follow your trail and really learn from you there.
The key there is, I think your experience, my experience, and many other people showed us how fragile life is. Unexpected from a bus or a bomb or, just crossing the street in London, which always happened to me, look in the wrong direction and almost hit by a car. It can happen in a given. So we're here in borrowed time. And I believe, again, we're not here to waste the time. We need to make it meaningful. We need to make sure, one of the things I learned that I wish I knew when I was younger is, regardless of where you are in your career, regardless of how old or how young you are, don't compromise. Don't compromise. It's not worth it. Do only the things you enjoy, or do only things you love with people you enjoy. In one of those two is not working, don't accept it. Change it. And going back to our ability to control our destiny, we have much greater ability than we think or giving credit to ourselves. But you never know unless you try to practice it.
True. You're a serial problem solver. And if I may ask, how old are you now?
63.
Wow. And how old were you when you first started your venture?
So again, the first one I was involved with, and it's actually before I went to school. I got out of the military. I started to deal with the robots. So
it's around 25.
Yeah, I was even younger. Actually, I started to work in the U.S. for NASA on the aerospace industry when I was 25, and that's after 3 years already building robots before.
And what was the recurring thing that you see really helped you in solving all these problems that are very, very disjoint?
The key there is really to find a significant problem, not something esoteric or something which is remote, something that can impact life, something that can impact businesses. And, when I was at Adallom, a great company now, and rightly so, people hear about the founders of Adallom, now the founders of Wiz Security.
Right.
Which, Asaf Rappaport and Ami and Roy and Inon, those four incredible people that had the privilege to be their COO at Adallom. When we worked at Adallom, cloud, talking about 2014, 2015, cloud became big. That's when people started to realize the potential of the cloud. Nowhere close to where we are today, but at that time, people did not realize how exposed or vulnerable the cloud is. And the wonderful, smart people of Adallom say, hey, we need to find a solution for cloud security before, people will expose all the tremendous weaknesses. So it's always to be one step ahead of the curve and understanding, okay, cloud is happening. Cloud now represents also a big challenge of cloud security. Once you had cloud security pretty much well defended, IoT had an incredible movement. And IoT, of course, IoT can be in hospitals, IoT can be in manufacturing. And oh my God, IoT is fully exposed. So let's take, again, one step ahead of the bad guys. Be able to protect it before they're being hurt. So it's always to identify trends. And then understanding, data is becoming a big issue. Okay, how can you play with that? Then understanding that AI made such a huge revolution. And actually, when it comes to AI, it's incredible. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was invited by UBS, one of the largest banks. They're doing every year an annual conference of the best tech companies, private tech companies, and they bring them over to speak to investors and speak to reporters, etc. And I don't know why, but we were selected to be one of them. And I was on stage. And I'm looking at the crowd, and I say, how many of you guys covered the agriculture revolution? You were too young. You were not around. So how many of you guys covered actually the industrial? Oh, no. You were not around when the industrial revolution. Guess what, guys? We are very fortunate that in our lifetime, we are facing what arguably is the biggest transformation or biggest revolution of all. It's AI. And it's bigger than we can even imagine at this stage. So drop everything, because conventional wisdom doesn't apply here. And that's really the magnitude of what happens. So constantly identify the trends before they happen, understand the challenges they bring along, and jump ahead and say, okay, AI is incredible, but it's not an AI challenge, it's a data challenge. Cloud is amazing, but cloud is exposed, so cybersecurity. Dealing with bombs or hazardous materials, it's crazy that you have to do it manually. Let's take technology and assemble in a different way so we can remove the human from the risk.
Yeah.
So I can put a few rods, and it's a real use case, by the way, a few rods inside a nuclear facility without the human getting close to the reactor. That's something which I've done with technology. Or how to deal with duds, big bombs that haven't exploded. So there are many elements there, but always going for the problem, which is significant, understand where it's heading, be one step ahead. And I think more than anything else, I think this is, I call myself an infomaniac. There's an endless curiosity, always to be a few steps ahead. And, it helps me a lot because a funny story that just happened, I mentioned about United Airlines. So about 2 months ago, I was sitting at the lounge, United Airlines lounge in Newark. And I have this stupid, useless memory that I'll tell you 10 years from now, where you were sitting, the fact that you came to the gate to bring me in, what we talked about. It's useless use of my brain cells, but I remember everything. And I'm sitting over there, and I see a guy sit across from me, and I say, I know this guy. And it took me like 30 seconds to run a query in my mind. I say, oh, in my brain, it's Scott Kirby, the CEO of United Airlines. And I found a polite angle to come and start talking to him. That's led right now to the 4 different tracks we're doing right now with United Airlines. We're helping right now United to transform the way they conduct the business, from baggage handling to gate operations, to ramp operations, to in-flight order taking and discrepancies report that then I can take it everywhere. But all of that started with the fact that I knew who Scott Kirby is. I knew what he looked like. I approached him with something that made sense. And here we navigated 2 months later to 4 different tracks, and then, by the way, coming now as one of our investors probably. So if I have to give some advice, and I know most of us right now spending more time than anything else looking at screens, read, learn, be curious constantly. You never know how it's going to pay off. First of all, it's knowledge is power. Second, again, I would never knew who Scott Kirby is unless I read a few articles and I knew to identify the pictures and to the person and then come with the right. But this is just a simple example. But curiosity, ever hungry, always hungry to take it to the next level. And don't waste, empty calories. Make sure that whatever you do is for a sizable enough challenge that if you're going to solve it, you're going to move the needle in ability to demonstrate with the medium complexity. The other day, I met with Oracle. And I'm getting a note and say, Larry would like to talk to you. To the ones that don't know who Larry is, it's Larry Ellison, the founder and chairman and now CTO of Oracle. It's 79 years old. 40 minutes later, I was on a call with Larry on a Zoom. And he said, Amir, you need to take this to healthcare. And I told him, I said, I apologize, but I don't think it's a good use for us because I'm always looking for places where I can make the biggest impact at the shortest period of time with the minimum obstacle possible. I don't think it's healthcare. And he convinced me otherwise, and we showed him. But the key there is always be curious, identify the problem, come with a solution that's going to move the needle, find a way to do it in a simple way that'll be easy to use in a non-threatening way, and show value. Nobody can argue when people ask me how much it costs. I say, I don't care. Of course I care. But I'm not chasing price, I'm chasing value. If there's no value to be generated, forget about it. If there's value, we can price it accordingly, and everybody's happy.
That's why I'm doing this, by the way. I think university is a very good place to learn, but here's my real education, meeting people like you and getting more educated and learning from your experience and wisdom. And, all the algebra I learned in class will fade away in 2 years, maybe in the next month, but this thing will remain. Who knows, I'll meet you again in the airport someday.
I think that's the right approach. And don't ever stop learning. This is a great institute, and as you know, I told you I know some of the key players here, and 3 of my kids, 2 graduated, and 1 is still here in school and doing very well. So I'm a shareholder with all the money I pay for this university for 3 kids. Maybe this carpet was paid by my tuition, but it's a great university. Yeah. But university just provide you with the tools and with structure. Learning never stops. And the ability to learn outside of this institution, to be always hungry, to search for information, to dare, to control destiny. I think those are the different ingredients that will allow, hey, if I did it, anyone can do it.
Amir, one last question. A few, we can say, perhaps spoilers that you see in the industry insights. We've spoken about AI and the future of how it really will influence humanity. Speech, aiOla is one of them. What other industries, key industries, important, Maslow, top industries that you think will be really impacted by AI?
So the amazing part is when it comes to, I hate to call it but AI, but let's use those 2 words again, 2 letters again, is in many situations only the top tech companies were able to benefit. The barrier for entry with AI, in my opinion, doesn't exist, which means it's applicable for all. This is really beautiful because it doesn't matter how techy you are, what's the skill set of your people, how advanced you are, you can impact your business tomorrow morning. So I think this is one of the things that's so unique and special about this. I can tell you that we took a problem, just one problem, but now you can combine it. For example, I was speaking when I was in California last week with one of the largest companies in the world. It rhymes with beta. And they are very heavy in AR and VR, so virtual reality and augmented reality. And they're trying to get in now, not just for individuals and consumers and fun, like to try to get it to QA, QC, quality assurance, quality control processes in factories, etc., etc. It's a great idea. But try to combine it now with speech.
Right. So
now you have visual and speech, and you get a much comprehensive picture. So I think right now we're closing the gaps from all different angles and make it accessible for anyone. I think what ChatGPT did was incredible. And people all of a sudden gain confidence that you can download ChatGPT on your phone and use it tomorrow morning, even with a free version.
Yeah.
So make it accessible. Make it easy. I believe, again, AI is already impacting way more than you think and in your life. But it's going to be, at the end of the day, in my mind, because it's a data game. And we talk about the limitation of the human brain. And we need some auxiliary power to help us to handle that amount of data. So first, you need to make sure you have the data. We're taking care of that partially. But then to be able to take tremendous amount of data and connect it in a way that no human can do. And basically elevate it to the point you can make better decision. And everything you do, where to go to school, where you eat, where you live, what to buy. So I think right now it's really big data game, and with incredible tools that are just going to get deeper and faster, and it's going to touch every facet and every part of our lives more than we think even.
It's as if AI is helping pulling down all these high-hanging fruits, problems in the world, and turning them into low-hanging fruits.
That's one way of looking at that, absolutely. But also streamlining low-hanging that very few people were able to reach, and now make it accessible for all. And at the end of the day, it's really about, I always said, I'm a simple person from Israel. everything you do in life, and test me if you think differently, goes down to two things. It's decision making and risk management. That's it. Everything you do in life, where you go to school, where you live, what work, it's all about decision making and risk management.
Mm-hmm.
If you have better tools to make better decisions and better ways to manage your risk, everything you do in life is getting easier and more successful. So I think if I narrow down to those two critical paths, the technology that now using this incredible amount of data will help us in those two components of decision making and risk management.
Amir, it's been a very, very rich conversation in this past hour. One last thing, as if the whole 1 hour hasn't been a very dense conversation, but one last thing that would help younger aspiring entrepreneurs that's listening. Our podcast is listened by a lot of entrepreneurs, but also very young, in their 20s. What advice would you give them if they're just in the beginning of their journey and they don't really know what to approach? There's a lot of problems in the world. Sure, we need to focus on the hard problems, constrain ourselves into the important problems in the world. But what else should we have in our repository to tackle these problems?
I'll give you a bit. Everything I told you was, I hope, very rich, as you said, and I'm quoting you. And I'll leave a few components on the table to try to put it together. And I think it's connected to everything I said before. One, always start whatever you do. Don't start from technology. Start with a problem. Everything has to be initiated from the problem backward. What are you trying to solve? Who are you going to benefit? And assuming you can find the right solution, how it's going to create a benefit, how you quantify it. So that's my way of looking at it. There are many ways to do that. But I'm always looking for problem solving. I'm always looking for value-based solution, whatever I do. So I always start with the problem you're solving and go backward. Second, daring. Don't be afraid to think differently. Don't be afraid to swim upstream. Regardless of your experience, regardless of your age, take chances. Third, and sometimes very difficult, especially in this country, stay humble. Stay humble. Regardless of how successful you are, regardless of what you have done, we always can learn more and we always can share more. So if you are humble, start with a problem, dare, stay humble, and constantly learn, constantly seek more information. And once you do it, one of the things I learned, I'll tell you a funny story to end this conversation. I always take tremendous pride that my superpower, I can sleep on command. So being an infantry soldier is very helpful because you sleep when you can, because you never know when the next chance is going to be, regardless if you're tired or not. So if you tell me, Amir, go to sleep, I'll be on the floor in less than a minute, sleep on the carpet right now. And when I was involved in one of my first deals with SingTel, when we sold the company, I got to Singapore and I could not fall asleep. And I'm not a big drinker, but I thought maybe I'll go down to the bar, maybe have a glass of wine, and that's going to help me sleep. And I go down and I meet with a French business lady from Alcatel-Lucent. And we're speaking for about an hour and a half. I had maybe a glass or two, and I felt, I can go to sleep now. And I apologized, and I said, it's time for me to go. Thank you for a great conversation. I have a big day tomorrow, and good night. She said, can I share an observation before you go? And, among other things, for a period of my life, I was a kibbutz member. You probably know what kibbutz is. And in a kibbutz, you can be smart or stupid. There's no problem whatsoever. You can be good looking or ugly, no problem. And if somebody say you're lazy or selfish, you're doomed. So now you know the context, and I'm telling the lady good night and saying, may I share an observation before you go? I said, sure, go ahead. She said, I think you're a very selfish man. Now, she had no idea how hard she just punched me in my gut. Okay, and I said, Cecile, I don't know why you said that, but it's really harsh. And I explained the context. She said, oh, no, you don't get what I'm saying. I said, please enlighten me. She said, you just spoke with me for the last 60, 90 minutes, and I learned so much about your experience. The fact you don't share it enough with other people makes you selfish. And yet again, I went back to my room and had a hard time falling asleep because I was thinking about what you just said, and I committed to myself, and that's something I'm practicing ever since. Whomever, and many young entrepreneurs knows that because they reach out to me. Whenever, in a polite, professional way, ask my advice, I'm more than happy to share my failures first to make sure nobody steps to the landmines already stepped on. And then, so I think going back to that component, at the end of the day, it's an incredible community worldwide and a very special community here in Israel, which is a tight-knit. So sharing is super important. Success and failures are even more important than success. The ability to be hungry for more knowledge, to dare to ask for advice, to think about problem first, and whatever you do something meaningful, understanding we're all here on borrowed time, and you want to leave your mark before your days out. So,
Amir, before you go, now it's my turn may I share an observation with you?
Please.
There's two things. First of all, you're very, very articulate. If I may share, I have done this so many times with other people, other founders. Your level of articulation, how you speak, I think it's so important. Well, quite fitting for for someone leading a speech company, but I think if there's one thing anyone can learn and must learn, I think it's how to communicate well. And man, just listening to you speak, I was looking at my computer for the first 30 minutes, and you spoke the whole 30 minutes with no uhs, no ums, no stuttering, and just give out all these ideas, and they're very valuable. There's no circular thought, it's just flowing. And man, that's amazing. I would love to learn that, and that's my first observation. Number two is you're very generous. And one thing I find very interesting in doing this podcast and trying to get people on this show is that I meet people from varying levels of success. And what I realize is that, quite funnily, people who are harder to reach, seemingly, are the ones who are most willing to come here. And people who are coming from, larger companies, more successful, they're busy, they're out there. They just came to Israel to visit, and they're going to be back in Europe, in the next day. They would come and visit the podcast, and that's very, very interesting to me. It's as seem that it is as seem it is. Forgive me. It's as if your glass is so full that wherever you go, you're just spilling nutrients and water and everywhere, and you're just spreading kindness.
So one of the things, thank you for that. And again, I follow the footprint. I just lost my father about 45 days ago, and very sad. Again, he died in good age, but it gave me a chance to reflect about my upbringing. It gave me a chance to reflect about the path that he paved for all of us. And I think nothing to do with business, nothing to do with innovation. I think all of us, if we just try to be better people, we'll live in a better place. And going back about our ability to control our destiny, those small steps translate to massive movement. Okay? So that's the reason, I'm aspiring, not always successful, but I'm trying to be a good person. And it's funny, I had a group of Chinese investor and Chinese business people came to visit us, and we talk, and they picked it up. And when I finished, they wanted to leave me a gift. And they all huddle up. And they're going to give me a video, which I had here. And they say, Amir is a good man. And for me, that was the greatest gift. Because I can be, better CEO or less CEO. That doesn't matter. Okay? But what I do control, and it's important to me, is to be a good person. So that reflects on everything I do, the way I conduct my life, the way I conduct my business, the way I work with others. I'm not perfect, far from that. I'm not trying to create a perfect picture here, but trust me, I'm committed and working on a daily basis to be a better person. So I think if each one of us will take care of that part, we all live in a better place.
Wow. Amir, you're a gem. It's been a masterclass.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Come to my hackathon. Come. Bo. I just for you hackathon. Special deal. 20% off.
Startup Shuk. Exploring Israel's Tech Bazaar with Deo Arlo.
All our shows and podcasts available online on our website and on all podcast platforms. Search Audioversity.